lot of energy into districts that we could win, and she said it's happening. She said if you lived in those districts, you would know that. So I don't know how true that is, but
yeah, there's a lot we don't know living where we live.
I think the challenge is how much gerrymandering, and that happened in our state to favor the Democrats, but it happened in far more places to favor the GOP. We're kind of locked into a certain pattern that will be very tough to shift back to our side, if you will, because the way congressional districts got redrawn, the GOP, despite its diminished influence, based on
we're talking mostly former Confederate states.
It's going to be very, very hard to put even a moderate Democrat up successfully in many of those districts. They've just been designed to keep the GOP in power. One could argue that basic demographics would suggest that Texas should be more of a purple state, but we're not going to be there in terms of congressional districts probably for another 10 or 20 years because of the way those districts have been drawn in Texas. That's just one example of one large state. Texas, you could argue, demographically should be a lot more like New Mexico, who went for the president this year, but I'm afraid we're a ways off.
And the districts get drawn, let's remind fellow voters, every
10 years.
Every 10 years after the census, or sort of proximate with the census.
So it's in the early 2020s that we may be able to really impact how districts get redrawn that would make it more favorable to our side to get more Democrats into the House. That doesn't mean
much less possibly just straight lines.
Right.
You know, kind of the concept of, okay, it's a republic, let the people decide.
Yes, exactly.
Draw lines that make sense, even if they go right down Main Street on which side of there's both parties, heaven help us, living alongside of one another.
But
I think how else do we break the BS in D.C. without breaking the similar BS that has guided the map drawing?
Exactly. I do think Jan Schakowsky has a point, though, that in those districts where there is a possibility, there is organizing already going on, and we're probably less than a year away from people having to file petitions if they plan to run. And of course, more locally with some other state races, we already have people vying for Governor Quinn's seat, including the other Democrats.
Yeah, that's the next thing I wanted to talk about. So let's talk about that. We have a situation where we will be electing a governor in 2014. I would say the three of us really like Pat Quinn. We think he's a good guy. He's been a progressive. He's run into some serious opposition or problems with organized labor over the pensions, and we see at the a recent dinner we see the mayor, and we see Axelrod, and we see Bill Daley all talking it up together, and they're floating this whole thing about Bill Daley running for governor, which I don't have to give my opinion, but you could probably guess it. So what is your take on this?
Well, the populist Governor Quinn is not very popular right now, and some of that is the feeling that he bounces around too much and can't keep focused on a particular strategy or agenda. Part of it is we're in a state where the legislative leaders, quite frankly, hold far more political power than the governor does. And when you have such significant budgetary pressures, as Governor Quinn is trying to live with, I think it makes it even more complicated and difficult to forward a progressive agenda or any agenda. And that's been kind of the issue, is that, like Washington, D.C., we've been kind of at a stalemate, particularly in dealing with the big issue in the room, which is unfunded pension, and how we're going to begin to catch up. And that's where the governor's had to play tough with the unions, because everyone's going to probably feel some pain as they try to resolve this pension thing, which I have to keep reminding people whenever they start bringing this up. This is not so much an issue of fat cap pension payments, because it's not that at all. This is a question of the state having not paid its bills. For years and years and years, workers have put their share into the pension funds, but the state has not. City has the same issue, and our mayor has a similar set of challenges. The dollar amount's smaller, but there's not a lot to give in the property tax supported and fee embedded city budget. And we keep falling further and further behind on our pension payments until we figure out some way to catch up.
Do you think that Daley will run? Do you think that there is some kind of collusion between Obama and his former chief of staff, along with Axelrod? I mean, what's going on with these guys? Obama just appointed an all-white cabinet almost.
He has not finished appointing his cabinet.
We know. We're rooting for some new appointments. You're the one that told me about Jack Lew and some Citibank stuff about him. Jan Schakowsky did defend him. I've always liked him in the media, but I just don't know about that. And
Who is he?
He was the chief of staff, and now he's going to be the head of the Secretary of the Treasury. And he came out of Citibank. But he goes back to Tip O'Neill and making a lot of deals. But it's not clear how close to Wall Street he is these days. And
I can't speak to whether there's collusion between former chiefs of staff, campaign directors, and the president. I do remember that there was a lot of effort to try to get Lisa Madigan to run.
And that's still a possibility.
Both for the Senate, when that whole issue that put a certain governor behind bars came up, and though she will never say this, I suspect until her dad retires, Lisa Madigan is also sort of frozen in time as Attorney General. A damn good Attorney General, but I can imagine that would get a little boring after a while. I think we don't know
a lawyer
this
for
point.
the people?
I think at this point we don't know how many folks might vie for Governor Quinn's seat, and he's a remarkable survivor. I don't put it past him, whoever goes up against him, whether it's Daley or a Madigan or somebody else, that he may not survive and come through.
This is the problem with this. You spoke to the issue that the governor faces being one of many decades in the making, a state that didn't pay its bills. Who was in charge most of those years? Is he not still the guy who cracks the whip in Springfield, Mr. Michael Madigan?
I've maintained for some time for all the groups that go rent buses and go down to Springfield to protest this budget cut or this lack of a per diem increase and whatnot, that we could save a lot of gasoline and bus money by just going to the southwest side.
Thank you.
And we ought to be surrounding his house. We ought to do it every time he's home, because Michael Madigan is the reason we're in this mess.
And,
if that's
and
what you're
he's
asking
the one
me.
that seems to be still in the buckboard driver's seat
In the
down
buck
there.
passing seat.
That's good.
He lives a constant, inherent conflict of interest, because the very nature of his law business that allows him to have a palatial home on the southwest side is getting property tax reductions for downtown commercial property interests. And to my mind, it is such a huge conflict of interest. Mr. Burke in the city council, the same kind of conflict.
Which is the frustration I'm feeling here, Tom.
A little bit?
I just come off
You're just
of
relaxed. Now,
vacation.
don't lose it, Kate.
No,
just
no.
stay
I mean,
mellow.
it's the quickest route to making my blood boil. Is
You
talking
had me
about
back to Belize and
Springfield.
kayaking to the mangrove.
I hear you, baby.
And I'm ready to go back there right now, sister.
No, I hear you.
Okay, look, we're going to take a short musical break.
Wait a minute. We didn't solve anything.
Well, hold on.
Especially the
well,
question
if you let me finish, I'm going to say Tom is going off to an eye doctor, but we're going to try to twist his arm. But we got other people. We're short a guest here, and we are looking forward to
I'm looking at that guy
something
eating his
miraculously
breakfast at table
happening.
40.
And there's a guy eating breakfast here that we may get up here. We'll see how much longer Tom wants to stay. Let's hear a little music.
You are listening to Live from the Heartland.
Play Twin Peaks.
88.7 FM. Oh, yeah,
It's my
something
favorite
new and
band.
different.
Well, they got a lot of tunes.
We'll be right back.